From weekend getaways to extended road trips, California is full of places to explore. And for over 100 years, the Auto Club has been there to help. Our travel agents offer you expertise regarding destination information, trip planning and reservations, either in office, on the phone, or online. Across the state, throughout the country, or around the world. Through all life's travels, we're always with you.
Road Trip has been made possible by the Automobile Club of Southern California.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell, and here we are in the nice little fast-growing community of Castaic. We're standing right beside busy I-5, Interstate 5, heading north to Bakersfield, which is about 70 miles up over the Tehachapis. These days, the I-5 is a major artery in California, and it's always filled with fast-moving cars and trucks. We take this kind of travel for granted in today's world, but it didn't always used to be this way. In fact, it used to be a big deal just to make it from LA to Bakersfield on a highway until 1915, when they opened up a brand new road that, when it opened, was considered an engineering marvel. Well, that road has long since disappeared, but believe it or not, it still exists. Some people call it a ghost highway, but it's still there up in the mountains, and that's what we're going to do on this particular adventure. We're heading to Bakersfield on the Ghost Highway. And if you're interested in what I'm talking about and want to come along with us, you're invited to do so as we head up over the mountains on this road trip. Well, this is going to be exciting. We've got a beautiful day. You can see forever. I'm standing here with our tour guide. Scotty, introduce yourself to everybody.
Morning. Harrison Scott, but people call me Scotty.
Absolutely. Now, we've set this thing up by saying that we're getting ready to go on a road trip down the Ghost Highway, but that's just kind of its nickname. Legally, factually, the name of this highway is?
Well, it's the Ridge Route, but the first Ridge Route. However, when it first opened, people referred to it as the Tejon route.
But it became the Ridge Route.
Ridge Route.
And
yes.
We are standing right on the ridge right now. Now, looking down here, there's I-5 down there. That's the way most of us get back and forth to Bakersfield.
Absolutely.
But there was another way to get back and forth from Bakersfield, and that's what we're going to explore today. Let's take a look over here, Scotty, at some of this. Here are our cast of characters here. We've got a bunch of old cars here. Howdy, how you doing?
Pretty good, Huell.
You ready for a big day?
Oh, yeah.
Tell everybody what we're going to do today.
Well, we're going to drive the old ridge route from Castaic to the foot of the Grapevine.
And we're going to do it in cars that would have been on the old ridge route back in 1915.
This is a 1915 Ford.
Do you think this is going to make it all the way?
Yeah. We've made 200 miles in a day in these things.
Really? We're only going to go how far?
They tell me about 38 miles.
38 miles. Are all these cars going to make it?
Absolutely. And as Art said, this car was built the very year the road opened, 1915.
And when you talk about the road, what's interesting about standing right here is you got a shot looking down here at the freeway, and then right beside the freeway, that's the old ridge route.
The old ridge route, the original alignment.
Isn't this amazing? How many people even know this exists?
Not many. It's a pretty well-kept secret. People don't believe you can traverse it anymore, but you can.
Well, now let's start off by, we kind of want to build this thing up a little bit. When this thing opened in 1915, it was a big deal.
Yes, the highway was considered an engineering marvel, the magnus opus of highway engineering.
Wait a minute, the what?
Magnus opus.
That means a pretty big deal.
Pretty big deal.
Why was it considered the magnus opus?
Well, because they said it couldn't be done. California was separated by the San Gabriel and Tehachapi Mountains. It was a natural barrier. The railroad didn't want to come in here. The Butterfield stage didn't want to deal with it. And California sent a contingency of engineers over to Europe and to see how they constructed mountain roads. And when they came back, they laid out a path over the mountains. The engineering study proved that it was feasible.
So we're getting ready to travel down the old ridge route that literally was an engineering marvel just because of the mountains that it had to go over, the twists, the turns?
Absolutely. Had this road not gone in, California would have been divided into two separate states because there was 30 movements afoot to do just that. This was the very first highway California ever built over a mountainous area.
So it literally connected southern with Northern California.
Absolutely.
So it was a big deal just to get over these mountains.
Absolutely.
Well, looking out here, boy, this is beautiful, but I'm all excited, but you were telling me when we pulled over, this is nothing.
Nothing. The road originally became known as the Scenic Ridge Route, and you'll see views up here that you will not see from I-5.
Boy, look at this. This is just spectacular.
It is, and many times of the year, right now as well, they're covered with flowers, lupin and poppies down further, but it's a sight to behold.
Now, wait a minute. We stopped here, I almost forgot, because where this water tank is, that's a historic spot.
More or less, yes. A few years ago, it was a location where Queen Nell had her shack. She and her husband had homesteaded a property here on the old ridge route. Actually, the ridge route wasn't here, and she deeded some of her property over to the highway department in order to build the road. She was sort of a frontiersman type individual. She didn't tolerate any funny business, but when the road opened, she sold gasoline in tin cans to the motoring public as well as soda pop.
So there used to be a little gasoline station here in her house.
Well, not really. She sold cans of gas.
Ah, and I have a feeling this is the first of many such places all up and down the old ridge route.
Most certainly.
There must have been a lot of characters not only traveling on this road, but with establishments all up and down the road.
And each has a story.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do. And look, here's some stories right here. We've got some characters with us today. Everybody give us a wave. We're going to load up, and we're getting ready to head down the old ridge route all the way up over the Tehachapies. Who knows what's ahead, but I guarantee you we're going to have a lot of fun and uncover some very colorful California history. Now, as we begin our journey, we're riding. Daniel, what's your last name?
Holthouse.
Now, we're riding in one of your old cars. What year is this?
This is a 1917 Model T Ford.
Now, you know, I hate to say anything, but we're having a problem getting over this little hill now. This was part of the deal, wasn't it, that these hills, this was a steep way to go, wasn't it?
Yes, it is. We're in low pedal right now. And this is about as fast as it's going to go up the hill.
What was the average speed on this highway back in 1915?
I believe they had a speed limit of 15 miles per hour.
But it seems like I've seen some pictures of cars going faster than that.
Not just like today, the speed limit may be 65, but a lot of people drive faster.
Now, lots of twists and turns on this road.
Oh, it's going to get a lot worse up ahead.
Really?
Yeah, this is actually a pretty good stretch of road right here.
Wow. I find it so interesting that it really pretty well parallels the freeway in a lot of places.
Yeah, look at the difference between the way the roads used to be and the way the roads are now. This is
What do you mean?
Oh, it's a real interesting comparison. This highway that we're on now was state of the art for 50 years ago. It's changed a lot. Look at how the freeways are now. There are 4 lanes in each direction.
Yeah. Boy, those views up here. Now I understand why they called it the Scenic Highway.
It is very scenic. It's going to get a lot prettier up ahead. There'll be some canyons off to the east here that you'll see.
Wow, this is great. We're just heading down the road. And there's really nothing here except the road itself.
You can really see so much more when you travel at a slower speed like this. You get on the freeway and you zip along at 70 or 80 miles an hour, and all you really see is all the cars on the road. You don't notice all the flowers and the trees and all the scenery. Look how beautiful this is.
Yeah.
That's something that you miss in a modern car.
Well, this is historic, one of our first curves.
Well, yes, there were 697 curves between Castaic and the bottom of the Grapevine. And
Now, wait a minute. Let's repeat that figure. How many?
Actually, there were actually 697 twists and turns, curves that mathematically equated to the fact that the average motorist went around 110 full circles from beginning to end.
You're kidding.
Not at all. They didn't have the money or the heavy equipment to go through the various barriers, so they went around the pinnacle and peaks of the mountaintop.
So is that part of what this whole engineering feat was all about, just cutting this road out?
Absolutely, and remember, when it first opened, it was oil and gravel. However, in 1919, they paved it with cement. The roadway was 20 foot wide and 4.5 inches of concrete. All the water had to be stored along the highway in order to accomplish such a phenomenal task.
To make the concrete?
Absolutely, there was nothing close by.
Now, how long did it take to build this road?
Surprisingly, only 1 year. The highway was built mostly with mule teams pulling what they called Fresno scrapers. There were very little heavy equipment. The only thing they had was steam shovels, and those were only used limitedly on the larger cuts.
Okay, our first stop. And Scotty, what have you had a stop here to look at?
Well, this was the site of the Ridge Roadhouse. They had a gas station here on the west side of the highway, and they advertised the location by having a race car on a very tall pole. Porter B. Markell and his sister Ruth ran the operation. He was a crippled man, but one of the early touring guides stated that he had a very fair lunch. Now, right across the road, they had a grouping of green and white sleeping cabins, and without door facilities. There weren't too many flush toilets in those days.
So this was the first place you could stop and stay?
Yes, absolutely. Up on the highway coming.
Now, what's left here? Is this part of it?
Well, this was the gas pump foundation, and
wow.
Back farther, there's even more remnants.
Let's get back in here. This is great. But see, I love this kind of stuff. Boy, I'm getting hung up in the barbed wire here. This is amazing, though, that it was...
Pieces of foundation still remain, and this was established around 1918 was when it was built.
Isn't this, you know, it's kind of strange to be here now when it's empty and deserted like this.
I know, it's a real pleasure to see remnants of the past. It makes you almost feel like you can understand what the road was all about.
Now, are there a lot more places like this? We've just started, haven't we?
Oh yes, there's many up ahead.
You did a lot of research on all this. Was it hard to find the history of all these places?
Yes, indeed. It took an 8-year endeavor to do so, and running down the descendants of the various families was even more difficult.
So in a way, really, this is kind of forgotten history, isn't it?
Most definitely. I can't believe that nobody had tackled doing the history of the road, but it hadn't been done.
Yeah. Well, here's a modern day traveler right here. How you doing?
Hello, Huell.
Do you know what you're doing here? What road you're on?
Oh yeah, I work right up the road here.
So
I take this regularly.
You know what this used to be called?
Oh yeah, and the old ridge route here. I ride it all the way to the end sometimes.
Isn't that amazing? Not many people know about this, do they?
Not too many.
You like that though, don't you?
Yeah, that's the best part. That's why I like to ride it in the morning. I was quite surprised to see all the old cars.
You thought you were in the Twilight Zone. You thought you'd gone back to 1950.
Well, I know this is where the old hotel was.
Yeah.
So I figured that's why you were stopped there. I didn't know it was you, though.
Yeah, it's pretty neat going down this old road, don't you?
Yes, it is. It's a lot of fun.
You think were there motorcycles back then going on this road? I don't think so. Think there were?
Sure.
Some
Harley's
old
been
Indian
around 100.
motorcycles?
Harley's been 100 years now.
Yeah.
So
there could have been
imagine-
Harleys going down this road.
I bet so.
Could you start up and head down for us?
Yeah, I'm
Let's
outta here.
recreate a little bit of old motorcycle history. Your name is?
Huh? Tom Lansky.
Nice to meet you. There he goes. Going down the old road, the old ridge route. Boy, everything is historic on this trip. Scotty, you've stopped to show us a piece of historic concrete.
Right. Actually, these substantial curbings were placed in areas where they couldn't construct a guardrail. The old Model T Fords and their narrow tires, if they got too close to the side of the cliff, the curb would deflect the tire back onto the highway. You can see the drop they would have had to contend with.
Grief, and I'm beginning to also see the scenery you were talking about.
Oh, yes, again, it was referred to as the scenic ridge route, and it most definitely is and was.
Now, these are the original curbs right here.
Yes, and you can see the pieces of the rebar. That's the old twisted antique rebar.
Why wouldn't they have put up just railings?
Well, in many cases, they were difficult to keep to the side of the mountain. The water and erosion, they wouldn't be substantial.
So this was a big deal just to build these, put all this concrete and all this rebar in here.
Something else that's interesting, of course, we're going uphill here, but you can see how the curbing has a wear mark on it. When they had the old hard rubber tired trucks, they were only allowed to go 12 miles an hour, and on going downhill, they would not only use their gear case to slow them down, but they had a bad habit of rubbing the hard rubber tire against the curb, and it wouldn't do much to the tire, but it played havoc with the curbing.
So you mean this stress right here would have been caused by hard rubber wheels from the trucks going down the highway?
That was one method they used to slow their rig.
Wow. That's amazing. There is so much history here, and this kind of helps set the stage here with all the old cars.
Oh, these cars are what use the route.
Yeah. You going back in time, remembering what it would have been like?
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
This is something else, isn't it?
Well, now, I understand the trucks would go so fast they'd bump up against these curbs.
They would?
Yeah.
What would they do?
Well,
go over the side,
They'd be bouncing off of them as they headed down. You heard that story?
I heard that story. And there's up here not too far, you can look down in, you can see a couple of trucks laying down upside down down by the power lines.
So there must have been a lot of accidents on this road.
I believe I had read inside the book that this was considered to be one of the most dangerous highways in the state of California shortly after it was opened.
Now, is that because people just didn't know how to drive on a mountain road?
I think people became impatient. They had a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, which I think people ignored. They wanted to go faster.
You heard that?
I've heard that.
Now, you all are staying in the speed limit, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
The whole way? Nobody's breaking the speed limit?
No, I don't think so.
All right, let's head back up the hill. We've still just scraped the surface of what's ahead. Boy, this is a very historic trip. Our first car trouble like they would have had back then.
Yeah, I think Model Ts were noted for being good cars, but they are also noted for breaking down sometimes.
Now, what's happened to ours?
Well, it just stopped all of a sudden. These have batteries in order to start them up. There's 4 coil boxes inside. The batteries will make the coil boxes buzz while you crank start the car, and then afterwards you throw the switch over to magneto, and the engine creates its own electricity, so it'll run the car. And this one is not working.
So what are we going to do? Now, what would they have done back in 1915?
Well, I'm going to look and see if maybe a wire has worked its way loose, and if so, hopefully I can hook it back up. And if not, we're just going to have to run off batteries as long as they last.
What would they have done back in 1915, Scotty, if they had had car trouble up in the middle of nowhere like this?
They would have had to wait along the side of the road until another motorist came through and gave them a lift to the closest service.
Or that's why they had so many service stations up and down this road.
Well, in this particular location, they didn't have a whole lot, unfortunately. They were at both ends, but few in the middle.
Yeah, because look out here. Boy, we're in the middle of
nowhere.
We're in the middle of nowhere right now. Look at this out here.
Yes, that's actually a newer road going down to the Castaic Dam.
Yeah, but if you had had trouble back here... Uh-oh, there it goes. Is it gonna run?
It's running off battery right now, but as soon as I switch it over to magneto, it appears to be dead.
Well, are we going to be able to run on a battery?
As long as it lasts.
Uh-oh. We got plenty of water?
Oh, yeah.
This happened a lot, didn't it?
Right. Lots of. This is a tricky little car. You know, you got to be really smart to run one of these.
Uh-huh.
A lot smarter than we got to be today, because they, you know, you and I can't fix our car. But he could get under there and fix it with a pair of pliers and a screwdriver and a piece of baling wire, and it'll run.
So that was part of going on a road trip back in 1915, was just getting from point A to point B.
That's right. But, you know, Scotty says there's not very many service stations, but there's 26 stops in 38 miles.
Just none right around here.
Just none right here.
Where's a good service station when you need one?
Well, there's one right around the corner here where there was 50 years ago, 60 years ago.
That ain't gonna do us any good today.
It sure isn't.
Now we're really getting into some history, and we're going way back because we have now stopped and met up with Mike. What's your last name?
McIntyre.
From the
Angeles National Forest.
Okay, now tell us about the road as far as the National Forest is concerned, because it cuts right through the Angeles National Forest.
Yeah, about from this point forward, all the land that it's on is run and managed by the Angeles National Forest.
And what happens to the ridge route officially right here? It receives some kind of an official designation, doesn't it?
Right. From this point up to just beyond Sandberg, it's listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
Now, how many roads in America have such a designation?
Not too many. Route 66?
No, not in California. Not in California. There's only one other highway in California that enjoys that distinction, and it's the Redwood Highway.
And this is all due to you that it's on the National Register.
Well, us.
It was a good partnership.
So how hard is it to get a road on the National Register of Historic Places?
Well, it's a long process. You have to go through the state to get their review, and then back to Washington to get their review, and they all have comments, so it's always responding to their comments.
And what makes this road eligible?
Well, this road actually has two eligibility criteria. There's 4 sections you can become eligible. One is engineering, and one is the economic importance. It opened up Los Angeles to the rest of California in a faster, quicker way, so the markets in the Central Valley could bring their goods down, and oil could come down, and things like that.
So it definitely qualifies.
Oh, most certainly.
And this is, now up till now, we've been seeing some of the old road, but it's been paved over the years. Right. This is the original concrete from 1915.
Correct. And later on they put this surface on to make the road wider and safer.
So wait a minute, you mean originally this was it?
20 feet wide.
Oh my gosh, no wonder there were so many accidents.
20 feet wide, and about 1925, 24, in that period they shaved the mountains, as Mike pointed out, and widened the road in areas and tried to eliminate some of the blind curves.
Wow. Do you ever wonder what it must have been like to travel on this road back then?
I've read the articles in the AAA magazines, and that they're pretty impressive.
And how many people make it up this far and discover this?
Well, not as many as we would think. Most of the people that drive this road know about it, and for driving for pleasure, it's a great road. We have a partnership with the California Off-Road Vehicle Association to some of the chapters are going to put interpretive signs along the way.
Wow. And this is what it cuts right up through here, and then it goes for how much further?
I'd say about another 17 miles on the forest.
In the National Forest. So all of this stretch we're getting ready to go on is officially designated as a historical highway.
Correct.
Wow. That's great. Well, nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
Any rules and regulations that we need to know about before we continue our trip?
Just drive the speed limit.
Okay, we're starting up again. We're going up another hill.
Yes, indeed. It's always a challenge.
Yeah, it really was a challenge, wasn't it?
Most certainly. Sometimes if you had a loaded car and luggage, sometimes people would have to get out and walk alongside a bit.
Yeah. Was this considered a trip of necessity, or was this a trip that people would take just to go on a scenic road trip?
No, it was more of a necessity. In fact, when people started out, there was a list of things they recommend that you carried with you: toolbox, cotter pins, extra leather belts, vulcanizing patches in case your tire. The rubber tires on the early cars were terrible. The rubber was very poor quality, and there was a bush along the side of the road called puncher vine, a 5-sided thorn, and it would play havoc with tires. You often were mending your tires.
So this was, when you set out on this journey, even in 1915, even with this new highway, it was, you were kind of traveling into the unknown.
Absolutely. You mentioned gas stations. There were quite a few at both ends, but not too many on the top of the route.
How did people get over these mountains before the road opened up?
Well, when the Butterfield stage came through from St. Louis, Missouri on its way to San Francisco in 1858, it came up through San Francisco Canyon to the east of us, and that was a pretty severe grade in itself, and they had to, the Los Angeles County had to lower that elevation for the highway for the stage.
So there really wasn't a main highway north out of LA through these mountains until this road opened up.
That's very true. Nothing. You had to, if you were coming down from Northern California, as soon as you reached Bakersfield, you had to take the Midway route, which dog-legged over east to the town of Mojave, and then catch Mint Canyon or one of those roads back.
You had to go way out of your way.
Way out of your way. That's what made this road of extreme importance. It was a direct route.
Boy, looking out front, you really get a sense of, look at this. It was tight going around these corners.
Yes, and you can see in portions here where there's asphalt where they've actually widened the original alignment. It was just the concrete originally.
Wow. Well, everybody so far is keeping up. Nobody wants to be the first one to break down, do they?
No, that's a 1915 Model T behind us that was made the very year the road opened. Lots of brass on it there.
Now, would there have ever been traffic like this, 5, 6 cars in a row like this? Would there have ever been traffic jams on the old ridge route?
No. In fact, it was so sparse up here that highwaymen would wait until you were navigating a turn or a grade, and they'd jump on your running board and rob you. They had quite a bit of trouble with that early.
Highway robbery?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you were going so slow they could jump on the car.
Jump on the running boards and demand your money and watch and jewelry.
So there were desperados up here.
Very much.
This was the Wild West.
Well, yes, indeed. You were very remote. There was no other way to get off of the ridge route except at both ends.
Once you got on it, you were on it for the whole way.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Okay, here comes everybody, and we have pulled over here, Scotty, because this was another spot along the road. There was a gas station right here that had a special name to it.
The View service station actually was over by that clump of bamboo, but
right over there.
Right, but you can see what they're talking about when they say View service station.
So they literally named the service station after the view that you would have seen while you were getting gassed up.
Yes.
Now, was this water down there then? This wouldn't have been there, would it?
No, that's part of the state water project, the Castaic Dam. Actually, about a half-mile back on the road is the Angeles Tunnel. It's a 7.5-mile tunnel, 30 feet in diameter, and it connects Pyramid Lake with the power turbines of Castaic Dam. And during heavy load demand for electricity, they release the water. It drives the turbines, and the water goes into the Elderberry afterbay there. And then when the load lightens, they pump the water back up to Pyramid Lake. They call it pumped storage.
But now, none of this was here in 1915. This has all been done.
Oh, yes. No, this was just mountains and no water.
Well, it still would have been a great view.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, here's a guy who remembers the view when there wasn't any water down there. Introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm Charlie Dodge.
Former sheriff of Kern County.
Yes.
And you told me that in the early days you used to go up and down the ridge route a lot.
Yes, From 1928 until they closed the old road, I drove the Examiner newspaper truck over this road.
Up to Bakersfield.
Up to Bakersfield. And of course the Examiner had big circulation. We took papers clear up as far as Turlock, California. They had the largest circulation in the West, probably 4 times as much as the Times, and now they're broke and the Times has got the circulation.
Well, let's don't talk about the newspaper. Let's talk about your trip up and down the ridge route. Well, what was it like?
The papers were hauled originally by Greyhound stages, and they were too slow. They were take 5 hours and about 15 minutes. So the Times used to race. The Examiner used to race the Times to get there first.
And how hard was it to get up this ridge route?
Well, after you knew where every curve was and how fast you could take it, we could make it over to Bakersfield in 4.5 hours. And
now, wait a minute, you're only supposed to be going 15 miles an hour.
I know it, but we had our contract said 4.5 hours to Bakersfield.
So how fast would you get up to on this?
Well, in some places if it straightened out, we'd get up to 45, maybe. So I knew where every curve was and how fast you could take it. And
if you didn't,
yeah,
it was a long way over.
Over the side, you are right.
So here's a man who broke the speed limit regularly and ended up being the sheriff.
I ended up a motorcycle cop first for the Bakersfield Police Department and used to write tickets.
Handing out speeding tickets.
A lot of speeding tickets.
See?
Yeah, I had 37 years of that business. Yeah.
A little bit of ridge route history right here at the view. Look at this. And it is a view, isn't it?
It is a beautiful view. This is a wonderful trip.
Now here's what would have happened. This is basically the way it was. People would have stopped to get gas, and then they would have just stood around at places like this and talked.
Yeah, sure. Rested for a while. I'm sure they did.
And just kind of look at the view.
That's right, yeah.
Kind of rest. They're tired. Boy, I bet you were doing a lot of bouncing, so you're probably glad to get out.
That's for sure.
Now, don't you give tours?
Yes, we do. Spring and fall, we give tours, and we do them in groups, or we do them separately where people come together and form a group.
And what do people want to, how do people even find out about this?
Word of mouth on websites and through museums and things, and we hand out cards and his badge.
Oh, he's got, I drove the old Ridge Route badge.
I wear this everywhere I go, Huell. I never take it off except when I go to bed.
How many people do you figure know about the old Ridge Route?
Not near enough.
Just some old timers, really.
Yeah, you know, this thing it needs to be reserved and kept up, and we need to tell everybody that we can to get them to come up here, and then we can get them to write their congressmen and so forth and get help.
Well, what needs to be done? It's still doing just fine, looks like to me.
But it's deteriorating. It's going to fall apart and be nothing here pretty quick, and then we're all going to be without it.
Yeah.
That's what we want to do.
And why do you think it's important that people come up here?
It's nostalgia. Look at this is part of history. Like Scotty says, if this hadn't have been built, there would have been a North and South California. That's for sure.
And it's gorgeous. It's just a gorgeous place.
Yeah, how can you beat that?
Yeah.
God, look how beautiful.
See, I bet you there wasn't a billboard on this whole road.
No, but there was a lot of signs that says curves.
What are we going now? How fast?
Well, there's no speedometer in this car.
So wait a minute, how would you know how fast you were going?
Well, speedometers were sold as an accessory with Model Ts. Some people bought them and some people didn't. This car has never had one.
So you would just go as fast as you felt like it was safe to go?
I guess when you get a speeding ticket, you could just plead ignorance.
But looking around these curves, this road was so narrow that if you weren't careful, you could go around a blind curve and just hit somebody head on.
Real easily. And imagine passing a couple of very large trucks on this road, especially going around a corner, or having a truck in front of you that was going 5 miles an hour. A lot of drivers would get impatient and they would want to pass. That's how a lot of accidents happen.
look at this. Look at the cars coming up behind us. This is great. You really get a sense of how twisty and windy it is.
And a challenge, too, for the early motors. These cars had approximately 20 horsepower, and my John Deere riding lawnmower has 30, so you can imagine.
Whose responsibility is it to keep up this road now?
Well, it's basically just maintained as a fire road.
Because look, it's getting kind of gamey right down in here.
Yes, the concrete was never intended to be the final surface for the road when it opened. They'd always planned to put a topping on it, but they didn't have anything in those days. They were waiting for something that wouldn't ripple with the tires in the hot weather.
Now here's the original concrete.
Yes, and they paved over it with asphalt ultimately.
What about rock slides?
All the time, even today. I was up here myself a couple of weeks ago shoveling rocks off the road. Occasionally the Forest Service will run a grader over the highway, but mainly the rocks are removed by people that are interested in the road, like myself.
Wow. I don't know, looking out here, this really gives you an idea exactly of what it would have looked like in 1915. Nothing's changed right here.
Nothing has changed. This is a wilderness area, a very scenic wilderness area.
Now here's a part of the ridge route history I'd never heard of before. There was a second ridge route, and this really gives you we're on the first ridge route.
Yes.
There's the Interstate, I-5 down there, and that little ribbon of road up above it is the second ridge route.
Absolutely. It was the ridge alternate, better known as US 99. It opened up in 1933, replacing this highway because this one had so many turns and twists that there were many head-on collisions. So they built a much straighter road, which shaved 9.5 miles from this route.
We've seen some old footage from AAA, from the Automobile Club of Southern California, showing that second ridge route, Highway 99, being built, and it looks to me like that was an engineering marvel itself.
Somewhat, not as much as this one here. However, their theory was in straightening the curves and making it was a 3-lane highway. The center lane was a passing lane in either direction. They called it the suicide lane. Unfortunately, it led to many accidents. But there were no freeways back then, even in the 30s. And what would happen, they had just as many accidents on the new alternate as they did up here. In fact, the first week that it was open, there was a terrible collision, killing 3 truck drivers. But the thing that made it a problem, people would have more speed, ability to higher levels of speed, and they would come up behind a slow-moving truck, not realizing the truck wasn't going fast as well, and rear-end collisions were prolific.
Wow.
Prolific. So the accident rate was almost similar to what they experienced here with the curves.
But Highway 99, built in 1933, was a 3-lane road the whole way, with the center lane being, what, up for grabs, whoever took it first?
Yes, but a lot of people would abuse that and turn it into another lane for their direction.
And the speed limit was probably higher than 15 then.
Yes, it was. What they ultimately did after the Second World War in 1947, they made it a 4-lane expressway.
Well, this is an interesting bit of history. You can see it all right here. The first ridge route, the second ridge route, and I-5. All 3 right here.
I-5 opened, or was completed, I should say, in 1970 at a cost of $103 million. And building roads through this terrain is a very severe effort, meaning that these mountains are full of water. Hydrology problems, again, are prolific. And when they were constructing I-5 with the machinery, they cut through the various mountains here, and they sealed off an underground supply of water, a spring of some sort, and a 1/4-mile section of the highway gave way. And in order to stabilize their highway again, they drove 3-inch pipes into the side of the cliffs, and they bled 200,000 gallons of water a day from the mountain for 2 solid weeks.
Now we're getting a real idea of why this whole thing, from the earliest days all the way to building I-5, has been a challenge.
A challenge, and it continues to slip and slide down towards the Castaic end.
Even today?
Even today.
I came over during night most of the time going to Bakersfield, and on a foggy night where you had that high fog on these curves, I knew this like the back of my hand at one time, and you'd get a whole trail of cars following you to stay with you, and if you'd make a stop like at Reservoir Summit up here, they'd say, are you going to stop here long? Because we want to follow you.
Because it was pitch black dark.
Thick fog and no lines either. No white lines.
So how did you know how to stay on the road?
Well, I just knew the road well then. Knew how fast you could take every curve and keep your wheels on the ground, and because I never had an accident up here on the hill part of the road.
Boy, I never thought about it. Would the fog get this far up?
Yes, the fog. You get the high fog, you know, and sometimes Reservoir Summit was a real foggy one. That's one place we would stop, and they would come up behind you. If you have a half a dozen cars behind you, they'd say, we don't want to go until you go.
So everybody'd be traveling in a caravan?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Oh!
Because many of those people, it's their first trip over here.
Boy, that must have been frightening the first time over.
And they shouldn't have been driving over here at night either. Because we left L.A. at 12 o'clock at night and was due in Bakersfield at 4:30 in the morning.
Boy, 4 hours of night driving on a road like this. We found some ladies in a modern car.
A real modern car.
Now, what are y'all doing up here on the old ridge route?
We came up to see the old ridge route because we read about it and heard about it and had never seen it.
So you just literally came up this road today. Did you have any idea what you were getting into?
Yes, because I'm a camper. And actually, this is a very good road in comparison to some of the things I've been on.
And what did you think when you came up upon all these old cars?
Well, then I wasn't sure if we were in the right place or not.
Let's talk to your friend over here. What kind of things have y'all been seeing, and what have you been thinking about along the way?
It's been about almost 60 years since my father brought me up here years ago.
So wait a minute, you came on the old ridge route?
When we first moved to California 60 years ago.
Oh my God.
Because he was an adventurer. He liked to do things like that.
Well, it's still kind of an adventure.
Yes, it certainly is. It's beautiful, just beautiful.
Well, I broke down and put on a jacket because we're going up in elevation. It's getting colder up here.
Very definitely.
And we're going through this cut right here, which is significant in itself. Look at the size of this cut.
Yes, it was 110 feet deep. It was the only cut that they used steam shovels for. And it was known by various names, basically Swedes Cut, Castaic Cut, Big Cut, but it's all the same location. And of course, we came up that climb before we got to it here, and then it's getting colder now that we're higher.
Now that climb that we just came up before we went through Swedes Cut, that's known as
Serpentine Drive.
And that's that was photographed a lot, wasn't it?
Many, many times on postcards, more so from the bottom looking up than the top looking down, but yes, very much so. It was a picturesque postcard.
And it was literally serpentine cut because it cut back and forth so many times.
Yes, to gain the elevation for these older cars.
Now, we just came through that big cut, but there are not that many cuts. Basically, this road just followed the contour of the mountain.
Yes, it was very rare that they attempted to cut through a barrier.
Boy, look at this out here. This is amazing. So they would just go around the barriers, around the mountain.
Yes, indeed. They went around every pinnacle or peak of right across the spine of the mountains. And that's what made it become known as the ridge route, because they built the road up at a higher elevation. Doing so prevented drainage problems they would have encountered at a lower level.
So it literally followed the ridge.
Absolutely.
And it is getting colder up here. How high up does this road go?
Well, just up ahead we'll be at an elevation of 3,883 feet, but ultimately 4,233.
So would they have snow up here on the ridge route?
Yes, very much so. In fact, there was a terrible snowstorm in 1922 that caught many motorists on the highway. Fortunately, they were rescued before anyone succumbed to the cold. They had no heater.
Boy, it's cold right now, and it's May.
Yes, I know.
Everybody's holding up. We hadn't lost anybody yet, though. We formed our own little caravan.
Our own caravan. And in those days, you needed a support group.
Now, we've got all our cars lined up here in front of a very historic spot. Tell us why we've stopped here, Jack.
This is the last place on the ridge route where there's a lot of parts of the building left. Almost every place else has been destroyed.
What do you mean destroyed?
Well, the Forest Service pushed everything over the edge and into the canyons in the late 50s and early 60s.
Why?
Because of the hippies and so forth were shacking up in them and causing fires and unsanitary conditions.
So they destroyed a lot of the Forest Service destroyed all
They brought their bulldozers in and pushed it over. In fact, you can see some of the rubble over that canyon right there.
Well, now what is this place? Where are we?
This is the Tumble In.
The Tumble In. Look at this. What was this, the inn right here?
Yeah, it was up on top here. This was a rock wall to retain the bank.
And so what was this, like a hotel, a restaurant?
Really nice, a nice hotel. This is one of the nicer ones. This is Sandberg, was the nicer ones on the ridge route.
Uh-huh.
In fact, right here you can see where it says Tumble In.
Oh, wow. What are we looking at here?
Well, this is scratched in here was Tumble In.
So they put that in there with their...
Right. That way they knew where they were.
Now let's walk on up here and see what's up here. Where would the inn itself have been?
Right in this area here.
And how many people would have, was this like a...
It was a small hotel and a restaurant and a garage and a service station.
Now would it go all the way up here?
No, that's where the water cistern was.
Oh. Boy, what a great place to come and have a meal. And
it's a nice view.
Wow. And it goes all... Do you remember this place?
Yes, I remember. Didn't it have a shade tree mechanic down here too? Yes.
Yes.
That's what they call these. Every joint had a mechanic, a shade tree.
Shade tree mechanic.
What does that mean?
Well, that means they weren't really super good, and they get you under a shade tree, and that's where they work on your car.
Oh. So there was a shade tree mechanic here.
Yep. I used him once to put on the fan belt.
Did he do a good job?
Yep.
Okay, Daniel, let's go. There he goes. His battery had died on him. Oh, wait for us. So all he really needed was just a push-off.
Apparently so.
So it just needs a push-off from time to time.
Yeah, it's been kind of temperamental at the moment.
Well, that's part of being on the ridge route. Come on.
It's a Model T. That's to be expected, I guess.
All right, let's get in. We got one last stop on this road trip. Well, our last stop, and what was it we call this place, Jack?
This is Sandberg's, where the elite meet to eat.
Where the elite meet to eat. And here are the elite right over here, and we're eating because I tell you, riding the ridge route, you work up an appetite,
Yes,
don't
you do. Real hard, quick. Especially when you have to pull broke down cars and push them.
Absolutely. All right, now tell us a little bit about this, Scotty, why we're at this particular place, because this is the site of a very historic and grand old hotel.
Yes, it was. It, like Jack mentioned, Huell, this was a high-class hotel, a log structure, three floors high, built by Harold Sandberg, and originally it was a cafe, a log cafe, when the road opened in 1915. Sometime after 1921, he expanded it to a large hostelry, and he had several cabins behind it as well. He had 25 rooms in all. And this is where you'd see the Cadillacs, the Studebakers and Packards. They had a sign out front that stated no truck drivers and dogs allowed.
Well, you think they would have allowed us to come in? We're a pretty motley looking crew.
We don't look very good right now, do we?
But it's in a beautiful location. Look at this. I mean, it was carved right out here out of the side of the hill.
Yes. And back then, it was a spot people would come to recreate.
So this was a destination, Sandberg's Hotel.
Yes, many people came here to relax and enjoy the area.
What happened to it?
Well, ultimately after the highway closed in 1933, it went downhill. It went through several owners and ultimately was leased by a gentleman by the name of Lucky Stevens. And he was an actor, bit actor in the Hollywood movies and mainly westerns. And he was going to turn it into a camp for disadvantaged children from the Los Angeles area. And while he was improving the structure, he was burning trash in the rather large stone fireplace, and the sparks ignited the shingles on the
burned down.
1961.
You know, isn't this interesting? Because, you know, there's a stone wall, there are a few things left, and, you know, you wrote a book on the Ridge Route, and you had to work hard just to find pictures of most of these places that were up in. This really is a forgotten piece of history. Once the Ridge Route, the old one, closed and everybody started going over on Highway 99, this place just almost disappeared.
Disappeared pretty much.
But isn't it interesting? This was a place that was busy, thousands of people going up and down this ridge route, and then basically it just all went away.
Well, in 1933, they abandoned it for 99, but at its peak, it ran about 2,800 cars a day. That's a lot of cars.
But it's all gone now.
All gone. Yeah, we're trying to get it back.
Yeah, now let's talk about that for just a minute, because we just came over the ridge route. People can still drive the old ridge route. This is something anybody can do.
Yes, and they can drive it in most any kind of a car. They don't have to have four-wheel drive or Model Ts, and they can drive it in most any car will make it.
Picking it up basically down at Castaic, where we picked it up this morning.
Absolutely.
And going all the way down a couple of more miles past where we are right now.
Yes, it terminates basically at Highway 138, Quail Lake.
All right, now listen, we've got a website we're going to put on the screen. We got phone numbers. There are ways that people can find this place and come out on an adventure for themselves.
Yes, absolutely. The website is www.ridgeroute.com. And there's also information about the Ridge Route up at the Fraser Park Museum, the Ridge Route Communities Museum and Historical Society.
So basically what we're trying to do is bring this back and have people come out and see the way Californians used to see California when they would go out on a great trip like we've been on today.
And this was a great trip. This was a tough baby for a lot of those people. The average trip was 12 to 15 hours between Bakersfield and Los Angeles.
Wow. Well, we didn't make it quite that long. We were moving a little faster, but boy, we've had a great time.
Well,
thank you very much. Here's the guy right here, almost single-handedly responsible for getting the old Ridge Route on the National Register of Historic Places.
Well, I had help from the Forest Service. I didn't do it all by myself.
Yeah, but you brought attention to it, and it's here now for all of us to enjoy.
Right, and I hope they do.
Yeah, I hope you do too. We've had a great road trip. There are Thank you all very much. They're all over there eating. We worked them hard today. Worked up an appetite, but what a wonderful day we have all had out here in this almost forgotten part of California's past. That's been it. That has been our road trip on the old Ridge Route. An engineering marvel when it was created in 1915, and believe me, it's still a marvel today.
I love how the roads are banked. Wow.
Well, hello everybody. I sure hope you enjoyed our road trip down the historic Ridge Route. And if you'd like to go on this adventure again or share it with family and friends, all you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727 and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.
Road Trip with Huell has been made possible by the Automobile Club of Southern California.
Wherever you're headed on your next road trip, the Auto Club knows the territory. For travel tips or comprehensive destination information, as well as booking your next family vacation, our website is a great first stop on any journey, no matter how far away your destination may be. Through all life's travels, we're always with you.